Hi, my name is Jake Waxman. This documentary, My Family, Adoption and Me, revolves around the story of a family dating back to the early 1900s. The journey I am going to take you on will give you the ongoing history of a family that was not formed by blood relations, but instead came together through the only available circumstances, which was adoption. To start my journey, I went where any child would go, to my mother. I asked her about her knowledge on her adoption.
I've just always known I was adopted. I think Grandma told me when I was in my cot. So obviously I wasn't aware of it then, but it's just something I've always known. I was proud to be adopted. Yeah. I thought I was more special than not being adopted.
Once I found out my mother's knowledge about her adoption, I then moved on to my grandma, as she is the one who adopted my mother.
Originally, I was born in Newcastle-on-Tyne, and my name was Sylvia Galler. That was my father's name, Alfred Galler. Now, and I was going back a very, very long time. When I married Marek, I became Sylvia Waxman. Then, after Marek died, and I remarried Lionel Koplowitz.
Marek Waxman was my grandfather, originally from Poland, who was a great and successful man who started a business without knowing any English, which led him to have a lovely yet short-lived life with my family.
Well, obviously it was a very sad affair. I was only 16 at the time. Luckily I wasn't younger, so it made it a bit easier, but I love my father very much. He was very important to me. And it was very sad.
Lionel Koplowitz is my grandmother's husband of 34 years and is a retired doctor.
I'm born in Newcastle-upon-Tyne. I was a general medical practitioner in Newcastle from 1952 until 1987.
Lionel Koplowitz was our family doctor back in Newcastle who had known Sylvia from a very young age.
Well, I actually met Sylvia originally when she was about 12 and I was about 12. Because we both were competing for a prize at the Hebrew classes in Newcastle on an essay on Hanukkah. And we both got a prize. I think she did better than me because she got a better prize than I got. But that's how I first knew her.
After many years of my mother having no contact with her biological brother, at the age of 44, she was finally found by her brother Steve, who only found out he wasn't an only child at the age of 21.
And I actually remember the day because I went round to my mum's for the birthday present. And she said, "I've got something to tell you." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "You're not an only child." And I said, what do you mean, Mum?" She said, "You've actually got a sister." And I was quite shocked. I couldn't believe it. And I said, "Well, what was her name?" So her name was Janet. But she gave her up when she was 6 weeks old because of going back to the early 60s, especially in the Jewish religion, it wasn't, you just couldn't do it. You could not bring up a child unmarried. So my mum, well, her mum, made her give her up. So that's how I found out, and I was 21 then. I don't know, I always wanted either a brother or a sister. And I just thought there was something missing all the time.
I then wanted to explore the journey as well as the reasons behind it, which led me to want to know what it took in order to get hold of his biological sister.
It was for me, because my mum was I think she was scared. She didn't want to know the outcome. She didn't want to know anything about, though she loved her and she gave her up, but it wasn't her fault. She gave her up for the wrong reasons. But I think she's just scared. She didn't want to know anything, but I did. And I thought, well, if I've got a sister, I want to find her.
After finding out that the decision was more for Steve than for my biological grandma, it made me wonder how my mum reacted to the same situation and whether or not she was searching for a biological family.
I didn't, to tell you the truth. I could have done, you can't until you're 18. But I never really had the desire to do so. I thought, well, there was a couple of reasons why. I thought, one, if I looked for my real parents or my real mother and she didn't want to know, then it would be disappointing to me. If she could have been looking for me all her life, but I didn't know that either. Or she was remarried with kids and hadn't told the new family about me. So I didn't really want to upset the boat at all. And I didn't have any desire or need to search for my real mum because I didn't feel anything bad about her. It wasn't something that was important to me.
After my uncle came to the decision to try and find my mother, I wanted to find out the process he would have had to venture on in the 1970s.
It was difficult, especially in the early 70s, well 70s, yeah it was early 70s, because there was no adoption agencies like that would give any information. It was easier for Jenny or Janet to find me. She could have found me years ago, or my mum or our mum, she could have found him years ago. But doing it the other way round, there was no information. They wouldn't give me nothing. And then I thought, no, I'm going to try again. And I found an organisation called NORCAP. And I thought, well, it's worth a try. So I wrote to them. They wrote back and said, yeah, we might be able to help you. So I give all Janet's details. And at that time, my mum was diagnosed with cancer. And what I was trying to do was rush them so that I could find Jenny or Janet so that my mum could meet her before she died. But they waited too long. It was 6 months before I got any news about where she was, or they contacted her. By that time, my mum had died. But if they would have pushed it, she would have met her, without a doubt.
After finding out everything that my uncle had to go through in order to get into contact with my mum, it really made me wonder how long something like this would take.
Leaving it all, I'm probably about 40, 43 when I met Jen, 43, 44. So it's got to be 20 odd years, 25 years. I don't think I could have done it any quicker because they held me back. There was nothing I could do. You know, you've got to go through these processes.
Following on from my uncle's story, I was intrigued as to how my mum reacted to not being able to meet her biological mother.
Oh, it was tragic. That's the only thing that upset me out of the whole thing, that he'd been delayed for so long, that and she'd been dead, I think, what did she say, 6 months, and they could have found me quickly or quicker.
They knew
and they knew who I was as well.
They knew where she was because, and I remember it. I just remember the words of the counsellor. And I was in Wembley, and Jenny lived here. Well, I never knew that.
Yeah, I could have been.
So when I
in the
was
country.
being counselled, I said, well, where does she live now? And she said, she's a bit northwest from here, which was Golders Green.
So I wasn't even sort of like, I could have been anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and I was, what, 20 minutes away? But they delayed it, and that was sad. So I could have met my mum.
Due to the process taking so long, they eventually arranged a meeting, which was comfortable for both of them.
We met at the Gate pub in Highgate, and it was neutral, but I say neutral, it was more near Jenny's house than what it was mine.
Prior to the meeting, they both sent each other pictures and had minimal contact, which allowed them to get to know each other a little bit before they met.
But I didn't actually recognise him when I came. I didn't recognise you.
I remember now, because when we walked into the pub, I didn't look around. I was blinkers, and I thought, I don't know. And then Deb's, the girlfriend, said, I think that's her over there. So, I don't know, I froze. And the next minute, Debs went over to Jenny and said, oh, I've got somebody for you, I think it's your brother's here. And then I looked round and there she was. And we just seemed to click. We got on okay, it was fine. You know, we
When
was
you
laughing.
stopped shaking?
Yeah.
He was sitting there with tears in his eyes and shaking.
And I just
time.
thought, I just can't believe, like, I found you.
And after finally meeting one another, it led me to believe that the situation must have been a hard one for both my mum and my uncle.
I was a wreck. But then also, if things go through your mind, because being in the Jewish religion, I just always imagined her being orthodox. And the way I'll put this to you is, there's orthodox ones, and they're frumpy, and they're not very nice. And I thought, is she going to be a frump? Is she going to be really religious, that she's really going to take one look at me and go, really? You know, I don't think so. And that would have been it. One meet, job done, never seen her again. All right, I'd have been happy that I'd seen her, but not to the relationship that we've got now, you know.
To the meeting I went with my friend Linda. She owned the hair salon next door. So I just went, not because I was more worried about what he might do if he was, you know, if he was a murderer or anything, which sounds so silly, but you're just taking your word that this person is your brother and that he's normal and everything. So I went with a friend as a sort of backup, and that's why we arranged to meet in Highgate. But as he's dead, it was absolutely like we've known each other all our lives. Yeah. It was a strange feeling.
Even though families are not all brought up together, my mum and uncle began a relationship that has blossomed ever since.
He was thinking of sort of leaving the person he was with and needing somewhere to go, so I offered him to come to asked him to move in here, or to move in with us, me and my son at the time, which worked for a couple of years, and then he left, and then he came back again, and then I think he left again, and then finally we've been here about 4 years now, 4.5, 5 years.
Isn't it? We clash now and again. We don't agree on everything, but most of the time we agree.
It works, and we're happy.
Yeah.
Finding out that I had a whole other family that I didn't know about at the age of 6 really opened my eyes into how broad my family history is. It also made me realise that no matter where you are and no matter how many years you are apart, family will always be family.